welcome. Wednesday evening, East Coast time here. Paul, how you doing?
Great, Randy. How about yourself?
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. This is episode 147 of the Tech Sales Insights, always brought to you by Sales Community. For those that are members, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will throw a free membership link on. And also sponsored today by the Alexander Group, who's the go-to-market and sales compensation partner of Sales Community. The way I like to describe them is you have a McKinsey and Bain, who are the white-collar folks, kind of pricey. Alexander Group, more blue-collar. People have been there forever. They come in, they do their projects, do a great job, great value, tons of experience across the board. And as it turns out, they've done some things for ServiceNow, right, Paul?
They have, Randy. In fact, that's where you and I met, talk about community.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. So I was so full disclosure, really don't, unlike some guests, don't really know Paul that well, but we met at a Chicago event that they had and definitely was impressed with them enough to say, hey, we got to get you on. So definitely appreciate that, Paul. So Paul lives in Seattle, recently relocated there, has two daughters, including one at Auburn. So good to see, I guess I should say Roll Tide. You can say War Eagle. We get a little fight.
War Eagle, Randy. War Eagle.
There you go. Enjoys golf and skiing, which is awesome. So by way of introduction, have a few intros from some friends and peers. So Kevin Haverty, who's vice chairman, a longtime CRO at ServiceNow, says when Paul Fipps came over to ServiceNow from Under Armour in March of 2021, I was excited about what he'd bring to the table. Since he's been here, he has not disappointed. He was instrumental in getting our impact solution to market, and so many customers are thriving as a result. He was quickly promoted to president of strategic accounts, where he leads our approach for our largest and most strategic customers globally. He also is a fellow U.S. Army vet. So Kevin says, I guess I'm supposed to say airborne?
Airborne. Yeah, that's
right.
You
say...
we just say airborne back.
Oh, he said he said you'll reply all the way.
If he said all the way, I'd say airborne. So he got it. It's
backwards. Okay, then I'm supposed to say hooah for the strong finish.
That's right.
We obviously didn't practice that, so maybe next time I should practice it. And then Tom Hannigan, who I've known for a long time, used to be a Cub Scout at EMC. Now he's recently promoted as president of the Americas. Hanny, congratulations! Couldn't happen to a better, nicer guy. Tom says about you, ServiceNow is extremely fortunate to have Paul as president of strategic accounts. Paul's experience as a world-class digital transformation leader has been incredible research to drive the ServiceNow go-to-market for the world's largest companies. Paul focuses on customer success and creating change that's making a massive impact for both our customers, partner ecosystem, and ServiceNow. And CJ, Cynthia Johnson, who's SVP Solution Sales, says, I'm honored to be asked. Paul's a good person and an impactful executive. Paul leads a global cross-functional team that's transforming and elevating our customers' experiences. He does this by creating a shared vision and inspiring the teams to dream big. He consistently brings an outside-in view to bundling, problem-solving, and innovation, and stretches the team to deliver its best. Paul has a unique ability to make the complex simple, the hard approachable, and the impossible possible. And then, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, she said, just don't touch the hair.
That's wonderful. There's very nice things people say. Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. All right. I'll send them to you so you can frame it up. So anyway, so jumping into the questions here. So you definitely have a different background, which is awesome compared to most of our guests. So you actually started out at the Army, then went to College, University of Baltimore, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
I did, Randy. And so first of all, I want to say thank you to you for having me on this fantastic podcast. I mean, the community you've built here is exceptional across technology sales. So really excited to be with you here today. And a big thank you to obviously to Kevin, to Hanny, and to CJ for all the nice words. They are incredible teammates. And we'll talk about team, but I'll tell you that as I came in from someone who was outside the industry, those three leaders really helped me on board and rapidly get up to speed. So it's a great culture, great team at ServiceNow. As you said, I did start my career in the Army. I joined the military. I was enlisted I ended up in the 82nd Airborne Division based out of Fort Bragg. So I was 19 years old. I was an M60 machine gunner, and I learned a ton of leadership lessons there. And then when I got out of the Army, I felt a little bit like I was behind on my friends. Now, later in life, I realized I wasn't, because I got to travel the world, work with people from cultures all over the world, learn lots of leadership lessons at a very early age. But when you get out and you see all your peers and your friends are taking jobs and you're back in school, you could feel a little bit behind. And I felt that way. So I went through school very quickly, took all the classes I could take, and had a great experience at University of Baltimore, and then was ready to enter the workforce after that.
Great. And then you only two great companies, Under Armour and ServiceNow, and you started in on the IT CIO side, right? At Under Armour?
Yeah, well, before Under Armour, it's really interesting. While I was in school, I was working for a small software company. So when you work for those small companies, you get to do everything, right? So I was doing everything from making calls to customers to actually doing training and implementation to software support if I had to. We basically wrote software and sold it to manufacturing plants and or large power plants for asset management. This is before the large ERP companies bought everything up. So I got to learn all aspects of it. When I finished school, I actually went to work for a large sales and distribution company called Breakthrough Beverage, which was in the wine and spirits business.
Okay.
And I spent 16 years there, Randy, which was a really great journey. We built that company from about 900 million in sales to about 7 billion when I left. And we did that through mergers and acquisitions, but we did it all on a technology platform that we built. So a lot of interesting learnings and stories there. But one fascinating part of that story is I became CIO and head of operations, a big shared services function that we used as part of an M&A strategy. We went out and bought other distributors, put them on this platform, drove out all the cost through duplicate functions, leveraged it on top of the ERP platform. And then through that, I actually joined the America SAP User Group Board of Directors. And as part of that, I ended up getting to know Bill McDermott. So Bill was the emerging CEO at SAP, wanted to get very close to customers, which he had built his career on. Yeah. ASUG had about 100,000 plus members. And so we did some very unique, I think, customer engagements between ASUG and obviously SAP and Bill, inclusive of the company that I was leading at the time from a technology and operations standpoint. So that's actually, it was through that relationship with Bill is how I got to Under Armour. So we can talk about that as well.
Awesome. And then maybe just briefly go through your roles at Under Armour and ServiceNow.
Yeah. So in 2013, I actually had dinner with Bill, and he said, "Listen, you should meet Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour." Now, as it turns out, I'm from Maryland, so I knew about the brand. I knew a lot of executives there. I did not know Kevin personally at the time, and so I said, "Great, I would love to meet Kevin." And Bill at the time was on the board of Under Armour, so that's the link there. And so I went and met Kevin, and I met Kip Fulks, who's a co-founder of Under Armour. And they asked me to join the company about 6 months later, and I joined first as the head of operations. So I ran supply chain, I ran sales operations, customer service, all of those functions. And then my background in technology, they asked me to actually combine those two. So I ended up becoming the CIO and head of operations. So I ran technology and operations for Under Armour for a couple of years. And then I started to actually move more into the commercial space. So we had acquired 3 app companies, MyFitnessPal, MapMyFitness, and a company called Endomondo. And with those 3 companies, we were the largest health and fitness platform and digital ecosystem actually in the world, actually on the planet. We had almost 300 million people had downloaded one of our apps. So I ended up leading the connected fitness business at Under Armour. And that was the product engineering teams, plus all the commercial teams where we sold everything from advertising to subscriptions. We built out a whole connected products organization where we had connected shoes, devices through partnerships with Samsung, et cetera. And then ultimately we rolled in e-commerce and retail into that role. So my last role at Under Armour, I was the chief experience officer, leading about 40% of the company's global revenue.
Wow. Awesome. And then you went to ServiceNow.
I did. And as I was leaving Under Armour, Bill said, "Hey, you got to come join us here at ServiceNow. We're doing so many great things." And he asked me to join because it really interesting, in the history in many software companies, you have the pre-sales journey and the post-sales journey. And as someone who had purchased, enormous sums of software over my career and actually put the software in for everything from back office and operations to using technology to drive commercial outcomes and growth, I realized that there's this friction point, and the way I tell the story, Randy, and you probably have seen this in your career, you go through the process with a customer, it's 6 to 9 months engagement. You lay out all the great things you're going to do, all the transformational activities if you buy the technology. And as a customer, you sign the paper, the deal is done on Friday, and then Monday, a whole new team shows up and says, "Great, what are we going to do now?" And, it was really that middle piece of that transition, particularly around the value and value realization that we were trying to solve when I joined ServiceNow and just make better. ServiceNow was doing some really innovative things, but it was all pieces and parts across the company. So what we decided to do was bring everything from success to support, training and certification, and then build out a consumer grade digital experience that brought that together and delivered for our customers, where we could track value realization along the journey. And so that's why I joined ServiceNow. That's what Kevin was talking about in the intro with ServiceNow Impact. And it's been a fantastic journey since then.
That's great. So obviously everybody knows about ServiceNow, but for anybody that doesn't, or kind of your perspective, tell us more about ServiceNow.
ServiceNow, what's great about ServiceNow is first and foremost, we're a purpose-led company. We really, truly wake up every single day and think about how we make the world of work better for everyone. And that really is the North Star for us. And so underneath that umbrella, obviously we have, what we consider to be the intelligent platform for end-to-end digital transformation, Randy. And that is really a workflow-based engine that can automate and simplify processes across technology, across human resources, and across customer. And not just customer experience, but that messy middle, customer operations. And then we have what we call creator workflows, where you can design your own apps on the ServiceNow platform to solve use cases across just about every function inside of an organization.
Oh, it's awesome. And then now as a company, you're doing a lot to leverage AI, playing a big role in some of your new offerings, right?
We are. In fact, we just in September, in our Vancouver release, this is what I think is really unique about ServiceNow is our product and engineering teams innovate at a pace and a speed that is unlike anything I've ever seen. And part of that is because we're a native cloud company. We have a single data model on a single platform. And so that allows us to leverage the R&D and the fantastic engineering organization that CJ Desai has built. But
shout out to the engineering teams.
Shout out to the engineering team.
The sales leaders don't always say it. So, the engineering team.
And just to give you one data point, they pump out hundreds of points of innovation in every single release for our customers. So it is just an incredible innovation engine that they launch for our customers to drive value every at least twice a year. So as part of that, the reason I bring that up is because at ServiceNow, we are now in a position, because they've rapidly innovated so fast, to where we're actually doing generative AI. What I mean by that is our Pro Plus SKUs that we launched in September are actually live, generally available SKUs that incorporate some very powerful Gen AI capabilities right out of the box.
Wow, awesome. And then maybe tell us a little bit more about your role in terms of focusing on strategic accounts.
Yeah, so my role is, I essentially have responsibility, Randy, for our largest, most strategic customers. We've been very public about the need for us to take that segment and create massive focus on it for our growth ambitions. But more importantly, what we've been able to do is bring together, our go-to-market model is essentially we go to market across 4 geographies, 6 industries, and we bring together all the extended go-to-market teams for those 250 customers. So there's about 1,000 women and men who wake up every single day and focus on strategic accounts across the globe, and we service and we sell to those customers so they're driving their digital transformations and getting the outcomes and the ROI that they expect.
Wow, so awesome. So if you think about kind of what your teams have done in the past couple of years, what do you have going forward, either kind of now or next year, that you want to have them do kind of different or better?
Yeah, I think I would say this business and the way that we're integrated across the geos. Our Chief Commercial Officer Paul Smith really put this as a strategic pillar about a little over a year and a half ago when he became the CCO. And so what we've been able to do is bring together all of those resources to those customers who can then think about how do they leverage their existing investments in the platform to actually drive whatever outcome they're looking for. In some cases, it might be cost reduction, improve productivity. In other cases, and I would say increasingly so, and we can talk about some customer stories, it is about new business models and growth through generative AI. So there's an interesting aspect to that. But what the teams have done is really think about where is the customer in their journey with ServiceNow? And we have a whole model that we go through and look at that. And when you're actually talking to the customer in their industry, in their company, in their persona or role, and really helping them solve their challenges, we can move really rapidly. Now, that's been in place for about a year for the marquee business. I would say in 2024, we're going to operationalize that more and get all the feedback from customers and the teams on the ground of what's working really well and what we need to improve, and do more of what's working well and get rid of the things, frankly, that are not working.
That's great. So there's a big theme there around, I'll say value, being focused that companies have it, either driving kind of revenue or cost savings, pretty much, right?
For sure. And I think, what we're able to do at ServiceNow is really identify what are those strategic objectives. What are the most important things that those customers are focused on? Because look, there's different, we're in this marketplace, whatever industry you're in, there's going to be ups and downs in every industry and every company. And so we can help those companies. If you're in a world where recessionary fears are very real, it's how do we help you with cost takeout, productivity improvement, and automation. If you're in a world where we have to grow faster because the way the segment or the industry is happening, it's how do we leverage the platform to create that new innovation, those new business models. I'll give you an example, Randy. On Monday, I'll be in Geneva, Switzerland with a very large consumer products company. And they already leverage the ServiceNow platform across global business services, across IT and technology excellence. But where they really want to go is leverage ServiceNow customer operations and customer workflows powered by generative AI to launch their first product that they're going to go to market with on a direct consumer basis. So a new channel for them, the first time they've launched a product direct to consumer, and they want to leverage all the great capabilities in ServiceNow to do that. So it just depends on where that customer is in their journey, where they are in that industry, and what business challenges they're trying to solve.
Great. And it sounds like we're talking about numbers and cost savings and revenue, but it looks like from your last quarterly results, which were recently, you guys knocked it out of the park.
We did. We had a fantastic quarter, Randy, and I will tell you that was just brilliant execution across all of ServiceNow, from every team member in all parts of the organization. From, as I said before, the product and engineering team continuously innovating, to the entire go-to-market organization, really helping our customers understand how the platform can help them accelerate their digital transformations or growth or whatever they choose to do. And so I think those results have been really a great outcome of that. I would also say that at ServiceNow, one of the things I've realized is we have some of the best support functions on the planet, whether that's human resources, our finance teams, our sales ops teams, our enablement teams. I mean, you name it, and it's just everywhere you look, we have some of the best teams in the world. And so it is a collective team effort to post numbers like we posted.
Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations. No, you're public, so I won't ask any forward-looking statements. So from a culture perspective, so you've gotten some great awards, best places to work with disabilities. So the awards are nice, but you don't get those unless you've got an amazing culture, right?
You really don't. When I was joining ServiceNow, coming from Under Armour was you can imagine, a very team-oriented culture. And so what I find is when you have team-oriented cultures, you can have a lot of fun. And that fun can be whether you're winning or if you're in a challenged environment, because you're with people and professionals you respect who are on the team, but you're all in it together. You're fighting that fight together. And so when I was joining ServiceNow and I was interviewing, and they would ask me, "Hey, do you have any questions, Paul, as you come in here?" I'd say, "Are you guys having fun?" And I think it took some people back, because it may not be a typical question you ask in an interview. But my point in asking that question was, it was a real culture test for me. I was looking to see, in all the people I was talking to, the fun question was more about culture than anything else. And I will tell you, Randy, as I've joined ServiceNow, the power of the culture is in the team. And we come together very rapidly as a team to solve problems for customers in a way that in a way I've never experienced in any other company. And so it's a very powerful culture, which I think is reflected in a lot of the awards and recognition that we've seen through Fortune magazine and others, where we've been rated best place to work and all those things you just talked about. So culture really matters. And I always, when I talk to other leaders about culture, what it means to me is, it's kind of, how do you actually live every single day your core values? And so at ServiceNow, we have 4 core values, and we, in meetings, we hold them up. We hold them up in conversations. If we're making decisions around customers or teammates or investors or shareholders, we think about them as well. So it's a very strong culture there here.
Awesome. And sorry for not saying earlier. So anybody just joined, we have Paul Fipps, President Strategic Accounts at ServiceNow. Anybody that's watching along or listening along, feel free to post any comments or any questions. And we've got Tucker behind the scenes to pull those up. So please feel free as we're going through here. So our title topic is sales leadership best practices, which I'm sure you could talk about forever. But before we get into that, from the Army, you hear so many great things. I've gone to some leadership trainings at West Point, et cetera. But kind of any kind of one or two takeaways in particular about leadership that you got from the Army that you use now?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I as I said before, I joined the Army when I was very young, and what I think about the military, and this for all the vets out there, I don't know how many would agree with me or not, but I think in the military, you can see what phenomenal leadership looks like, and you can see what less than phenomenal leadership looks like. And if you're smart, you learn from both sides of that spectrum. And one of the things the military does when you're very early on, so I went to basic training, and I went to infantry school, and I went to airborne school, and I ended up going to the 82nd Airborne, and I show up there, and within the first couple of weeks, there's 2 things they try to get you to do. One is they want to get you up and jump out of a plane in the 82nd with what they call battalion mass attack, which is hundreds of
hopefully
people.
Hopefully with the parachute on.
Yeah, with a parachute on. And with hundreds of people in there. That's the first thing, because they want you to experience that at scale. And the second thing is, your first field exercise, where you're actually out there practicing maneuvers. I'll never forget, I had a platoon sergeant, and he said, "Listen, we're going to do this exercise." So all 40 platoon members, we did this exercise where it was a kind of a standard maneuver you would do in the infantry. And within the first 20 minutes, he essentially made everyone else was not available. So he essentially, quote, killed them off, And he did that so that he could actually say to the 3 new people, I was one of them, now no one is around, everyone is incapacitated, what is the mission? And it was our job, even as privates, to understand what the mission was. What were we trying to accomplish? Yeah. And I tell that story because it left this indelible mark on me that said, listen, if I can learn to keep the mission or the company first, if I can learn to keep the team second, right? In that case, the 3 of us just trying to figure out, did we remember the mission, and could we actually go and conduct that mission or achieve it? And then myself third, then it's going to be a pretty good leadership principle for me. And it always has. So it's always been company and mission first. team second, and myself third. And I've kept those three in order, or I've at least tried to over my entire career.
Yeah, it's funny. I got feedback from some younger and career people that I mentor, talk to, that either they're ex-athletes or military, that they're now going to the workplace and they're just kind of mystified by how people don't. It's not. I don't know if you write what the right word is, but kind of take direction or follow, or kind of, I would say, do what they're told, but it's the right thing to do. It's like, you're in the military or sports team, whatever. Okay, there is a line. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Blah blah blah. You don't have anybody second guessing or passive aggressive or anything else. I think in today's kind of crazy world, right? It's kind of harder. It's probably easier under the leadership that McDermott has. You have kind of everything else, but most corporate America, things are a lot harder to be able to kind of keep everybody in the guardrails, right?
They are. And I think as the world has changed and evolved, from a leadership standpoint, the challenges are, how do you actually create the environment where you can incorporate all those ways of working, all those different styles, all of those unique perspectives. And I really do think, particularly as a senior leader, it's our responsibility to create those environments, Randy, where people can come in and show up and be their best selves. And to your point, that's hard, because the boundaries of work may have been a physical building, 15 or 20 years ago. That's not the case anymore. And so whether it's handling remote work, in some cases it's that, the whole concept of the gig economy. How do you incorporate people who want to work only a certain amount of time on a certain part of your organization and take full advantage of those talents? So it really is, I think it's really broadened, how we actually engage as leaders going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So our title topic, sales leadership best practices, obviously a lot of things that you can talk about, but I think one in particular you're super passionate about is the understanding the customer and the customer journey.
It really is. I think what's been great about working for ServiceNow is I bring a unique perspective as someone who has, as I said before, purchased a lot of software in my career for all kinds of purposes. And been a customer, but also had, I actually started my career in a software company, and then, and now kind of bookending it, so to speak, in a software company, and realizing that, everything starts with the customer. And I know we say that a lot, as individuals and as companies, but I will tell you, there's two people that do that really, really well that I've had the privilege to work for. I worked for Kevin Plank for 7 years, who's the founder and now the executive chairman of Under Armour. And I would say that, Under Armour is probably 20 plus years old at this point. But Kevin had the consumer insight to actually create the first compression sweat wicking shirt to be light on athletes on the field. So he took this consumer insight and he understood the articulated needs to be faster, lighter, and obviously not like a heavy soaked cotton t-shirt. But then he thought about
those old Cotton Hanes beefy tees. Remember those things?
Yeah. And he actually took a soaked cotton t-shirt and weighed it, and it weighed almost 3 pounds. So if you're playing any kind of sport and you're carrying around an additional 3 pounds, so that was the insight that he had, and he really worked to innovate around that product continuously. And so I think, that consumer insight, the articulated need, but then he thought about the unarticulated need. How do you expand this out into multiple sports? He played football, but he took it across all different sport categories and into lots of innovation into, apparel and eventually footwear. Yeah. And I think, every conversation we would have would start with the athlete, in that case, the athlete and the athlete insights. At ServiceNow, I would say, in many conversations with Bill McDermott, he starts with what's best for the customer. And when you set the tone around what's best for the customer, we immediately put ourselves in a mindset that says, well, what's the customer journey? What are they experiencing? What is their industry? What is their company within that industry and their positioning? What are their biggest challenges? And then how do we help them solve those biggest challenges? And then you engage in a strategic conversation with a customer because she or he knows you're there to help them and not just try to sell them something. I mean, nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody wants to be engaged with and try to help solve their challenges or their opportunities.
Yeah. And then the concept we touched on a little bit before, but the importance of kind of value in terms of, what are your customers getting from ServiceNow? That value is a huge theme, right?
It's a huge theme. And one of the most important points about value is even developing the business case with your customers around value. So it's really understanding, in some cases, different companies may have different hurdle rates, as an example. So their investment thesis or their capital committees, they may have more stringent rules. They may be looking at technology investments the same way they look at physical or plant asset investments. And you have to understand, how are you positioning your product, your service against all of those other assets or all of those other priorities, so to speak. And I think that when you can really collaborate on a business case that shows demonstrable return on investment and then qualitative, how you're going to move the ball forward. In our case, we do that around customer experience, around employee experience, but we can show the hard return on investment through productivity and automation. And then when we can help our customers grow their existing businesses or go into new businesses, you start to hit every single angle and you become that strategic partner.
And then on the value side, do you actually break it down by personas and ideal customer profiles and kind of get specific?
We do. And again, that's customer dependent, but we really like to get to that level, Randy, with the customer. And that takes a lot of work and insight. We have a team that's part of my organization called Inspire Value. And that team it's a global team. They work very closely with the core account teams and very closely with the customer to really figure out what is the actual hard dollar return on investment that we can bring to those customers. And then, with ServiceNow Impact that we talked about before, on the other side of that, we actually help them track that return on investment and that value. So very rarely will you find a company, I think we're very unique, where we will do the business case together, and then we will put that into ServiceNow Impact and work closely with our customers to recognize and realize that value along their journey.
Awesome. And then kind of tangentially, I'll say C-suite trends, right? We've had crazy time, right? You had everybody crushing it, even though it was COVID, but usually the growth there. Now, whether you want to call it recession, cost cutting, now you got AI growth again. It's kind of schizophrenic in terms of, what's going on. How do you see that?
I think you're spot on, Randy. We came out of the pandemic and we saw an acceleration in investment across the board in 21 and even somewhat into 22. And then the world shifted very quickly with the supply chain issues that we had, with all of those things converging. Obviously, we've had some very, I would say, cataclysmic events globally, with different wars. And so what we started to see was at the C-suite, customers and companies thinking about how do we pull back on some of that investment and how do we rethink, kind of what we've invested in the past 18 months, and have we absorbed those investments, and then where do we go forward? And we saw that pullback happening. And so we shifted, at ServiceNow, we shifted again to meet our customers where they were around how they could actually leverage the ServiceNow platform in cost takeout scenarios. So consolidating technology platforms that may have been purchased over the pandemic for, work from home capabilities or whatever. Where could they actually start to leverage the ServiceNow platform that they may have already owned, to go and reduce some of those costs? Or can we actually automate more? We have a customer, it's a really interesting example, Randy, where we've had a banking customer who implemented 4 different robotic process automation bots in 1 month in order to automate and drive productivity. So productivity was a big conversation. And then, just as we were getting into that and many companies were adopting that as their principles, you get generative AI, and it kind of comes in and lands in a big way and creates ripples throughout the world, as we all know. And the conversation now has shifted to, do you have a generative AI strategy? How can you help me actually leverage generative AI to differentiate myself in the marketplace through either customer experience, through employee experience, or to drive, some of that hyper automation?
Wow, that's great. And then do you find I'm going to say this the right way, but a couple of years ago, selling was kind of easier, and then now it's kind of harder. And, there really need to be students of the game and improving in terms of the sales, whether it's, kind of the reps or managers, right? It's just harder now.
Yeah. When I think about whether it was easier or harder, I think probably it was, in that time, it was was a lot of purchases happening. So it was probably, to your point, easier. I think today, it just, customers are there's more scrutiny around the investments they're making. And so at ServiceNow, what we focus on is ensuring that we're lining up the right solutions with the right commercial models, particularly in the business that I lead, and the flexible commercial models where customers can grow into them rapidly and adopt the software that drive that return on investment so they realize that value based on those outcomes. And so there is more work there, Randy, but that's work. I think that's disciplined work that we should all be doing no matter what.
Absolutely. I did this weekly post. It might be old school, but Roger Marino, who's the M&E MC, a friend, Brian Stenberg, sent me last week, the time I guess we had a bad quarter. He sent me a note or he sent a note to everybody. What does it mean to be professional? And there's another one, just like sales basics, but those sales basics and professional, 80% of that, even though it was from the 80s when you had to, kind of the admins would, type your memos, still holds true, right? So a lot of it just kind of doing those, there's a lot that's new, but there's a lot that's the same in terms of just doing those sales basics and kind of grinding. And, you can't push people now to, work hard, but kind of you get in early, you do that. You've got the calling hours, you focus sales calls, you focus on meetings, do your paperwork at night. It's, interesting dynamic going on.
It really is. And it is that discipline that you talked about. I mean, customers are going to buy on value first, always. They're going to buy on, can you help them grow? And I think increasingly they're going to buy on, can you help them create these new digital business models? I mean, remember, we are in the technology space just by its very nature. Your audience is in the technology space.
Right.
But, there's so many other industries out there that are trying to figure out, how is technology going to disrupt their industry and therefore their company and their business? And so the opportunity for us to bring very unique solutions as a technology industry that helps them solve those challenges, they're looking for us to help them lead, help them think about how they can lead in their space. And so I think that discipline, there's a great saying, discipline equals freedom. And, if you have that discipline, it creates the freedom for you to have the creativity to bring some of those solutions to bear.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So moving on here. So you've obviously had a lot of great mentors over the years. So any kind of one or two in particular that you would highlight, and any specific advice that you had received from them?
Yeah, I'll highlight two, Randy. I mean, there's one obvious one, but I started to tell the story earlier. I mean, I would just say that, listen, Bill McDermott's been, probably one of my best mentors for, I think going on, he and I were just talking, I think it's almost 15 years now, and so it's been a great relationship. But one of the things Bill challenged me with a long time ago, I said, Bill, how do you think about goal setting? And it was a great conversation, but he said, well, I said 10-year goals. And I just wrapped up my 10-year goals and I refreshed them last year, Paul. This is a while ago. And I thought to myself, I'm trying to make sure I have really 1 year and 3-year goals set, and 10-year just seems so.
Yeah.
But the point of view here for all of us is most people don't actually write down their goals. And most people don't set goals. Very few actually write them down, and even fewer track them along the way. And so you get into this 1 year cycle, whether it's personal, professional, whatever you're trying to accomplish with your teams, and you really overestimate what you can do in 1 year, and you way underestimate what you can do in 5 or 10 years. And so I think from a mentoring standpoint, that challenge really, I took that to heart. And then the second is I about 7 years ago, I got to meet General Stanley McChrystal, who is amazing. Yeah, so you may have known. I actually got to do his podcast a few years ago as well, Randy. And so
no way.
I did, and he is, I got to meet a lot of athletes when I was at Under Armour. So I was very fortunate in that way. And I never really got nervous or intimidated by the athletes. But when I met General McChrystal, it was really, because I was in the military, I think it was almost like meeting Superman, the first time. So for about this past 7 years, he's also been a great mentor of mine. And he has an awesome saying for all of us and for companies and for individuals and for teams. And he basically believes that we are often the architects of our own fate. And I think that's just a great way to think about any endeavor that you go into. that you're really, you are in very much control of architecting what the outcome is. And so those two have been great mentors for me, and I hope they will be in the future.
Oh, that's great. So I'm going to give a shameless plug, Tucker. Maybe you can put the link up. But did I ever give you one of my books?
No.
Oh, okay, we'll have to. Haverty, I know, had gotten a bunch for everybody back a year or so ago. So anyway, afterwards, I get your ad to send it to you. But Violent Agreement on the Goaling. So if you go kind of page 218 to 221, this is actually my goals from, at the time it was 2020, but I break it down in different areas. And then I actually have the phases of my life. And at the time, I'm now over 60, but it was kind of 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 plus, but kind of, thinking about it that way. So, hopefully everybody does your in-year goals, but kind of thinking ahead. And usually people take for granted, but, if you don't aim, you're not going to get, right? And the higher you can aim, if you go back, admittedly, when, you and I were 20 years old, you probably didn't even know what the heck a president was at a tech company, right? Or, senior executive or anything else, let alone, having that as a goal, right? So the higher you aim, you just keep going and going.
You do. And I think the way, on a personal and professional level, I think you can look for heroes and mentors and model that behavior. Because to your point, Randy, I mean, when I started in technology, there was no title called Chief Digital Officer. There was no title called Chief Experience Officer. It was
the IT executives you'd sell to, they're called DP managers, data processing managers.
Right. So CIO didn't exist even back then,
No.
So you don't know where the world is going to go in terms of evolving in titles and how things change. But if you can pick some of those role models and those people you really admire out there and model your career off of them, I think you can. It's a good North Star to have as you navigate those 10 and 20-year goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so I don't forget to bring it up. So Alexander Group, thanks for your sponsorship. Any kind of nuggets that you want to share in terms of your experience working with Alexander Group?
I mean, I was just blown away by the conference that you and I met at last year, Randy, because the content at the conference I thought was exceptional. It was a range of sales ops, technology leadership. They seem to have all of the cross sections covered in a very tight time frame. So.
Yeah, really, really impressive. And they're pretty sure they do some projects, I know, for Haverty and I think some others. So, all right, we have a question from Jimmy. So again, definitely feel free to ask any questions, make any comments. We'll do our best to get to them. So Jimmy asks, what makes a younger or new sales rep stand out to you? Are there certain characteristics or things you look for?
Yeah, great question, Jimmy. I think for me, what I look for is someone who is really disciplined in the sales process and incredibly well prepared when they get the moment. And that moment might be in front of the customer. It might be in front of the leadership team. It might be, could be in front of their team. But wherever that moment is, they're very well prepared. They understand the customer challenges. They understand how your solutions apply to those customer challenges. And they understand the actual process and where they need to take it. And they also understand where they need help. I mean, that's the other part, right? I mean, people, you got to ask for help. You got a big team behind you, hopefully, with lots of capabilities.
Absolutely. And then I'll add on from a perspective, just being prepared, right? So kind of you have to do, used to be a nice to have, now it's a must have. You have to make sure you checked out kind of what their LinkedIn is, what their background is, know what the company is. So all that work where you have it all at your fingertips, you have to have it do it. If you get on and say, geez, what business are you in? Or kind of where did you come from before? What school did you go to? That's an easy way to have the customer say, look, I don't want to, if you don't know that, I can't trust you to be a good, not only sales rep to sell me something, but you have that ongoing follow-on kind of support and help as well, right?
Absolutely. And I just to build on that too, Randy, and for you, Jimmy, it's also that intellectual curiosity. Are you willing to ask the right questions? I mean, how much do you want to, that old saying, have rabbit ears and not alligator mouth. And so, how much talking versus listening are you doing in the conversation? And are you asking the right questions? And again, earlier in the career, that really matters across the board. It matters later in the career too. And I still do it today when I talk to customers. I'm much more interested in hearing about their challenges and their opportunities than I am about positioning our products or our solutions.
Yeah. So thanks, Jimmy. Any others, feel free to make any comments or questions as well. So interestingly enough, you actually have using kind of ServiceNow on ServiceNow for a lot of your kind of go-to-market processes.
We do. I'll tell you, Randy, it's one of our most, I think it's kind of a secret weapon, so to speak, at ServiceNow. We have Chris Betty, who's our Chief Digital and Information Officer. He's an amazing technology leader. And he's created an entire team who can rapidly adopt all that innovation I talked about in the beginning, that CJ Desai's organization, the product and engineering organization. He adopts that as fast as it comes out and goes into production, so that at ServiceNow, all 22,000 employees, typically on a mobile device, are leveraging that innovation. And so we know how that works. We know what works really well. We can apply it to the right processes. We get the productivity gains, et cetera. And Chris has a team that tells that story that we then leverage with customers who are interested in learning, how does ServiceNow do it? Because we are a large company, we're a global company, we're a tech company. We have all the same challenges that you would have anywhere else in HR, in technology, in customer operations. And so the now on now story is one of the most powerful things that we do. And it's one of our best rated content pieces when we do EBCs with our customers.
Wow. I mean, that's got to be really exciting. And then from a sales methodology perspective, you've kind of collated in kind of the best of the best, and you call that Now Sell?
We do. We have what we call, we've recently gone to the Now Sell methodology. And so it has a lot of the same components that you would see in many selling methodologies. But one of the things that I think our team has done brilliantly around the Now Sell methodology is they've focused on simplicity. So even in 2024, it's how do we simplify the account planning process so the account teams can rapidly iterate on the account plan, because customers are changing so fast. We just talked about how fast the world is changing. So we want to give our account teams the ability to make the account plans dynamic, and so they're shared across all the cross-functional teams. But also things like, how do you simplify the opportunity summary so that you bring the entire team together, all the extended go-to-market resources, and they're all looking at the opportunity summary so they know their part and what role they're going to play on the field, or what position they're going to play on the field, so that you can win together. And so there's capabilities like that the team has built in, but essentially it's a simplified and I would say very fast-paced selling methodology that we've built. And it's relatively new. And so, the teams have really done a nice job of leaning in, getting enabled and putting it into action.
Oh, that's awesome. And so thinking about diversity best practices. So do I have this right? Your team is actually 80% women?
My direct reports are my direct reports are 80% women, Randy. And I share that statistic because those women are actually the best in the business and what they do. They happen to be women, but I think they bring, that collective team brings a very diverse perspective as we think about, the business that we're fortunate enough to lead. And when you ask about best practices, at ServiceNow, our CHRO, Jackie Candy, is the best in the world.
Love Jackie.
Did you know Jackie? Yeah. So she has built an incredible HR team. The way that we invest at ServiceNow in terms of training and career development, and the way that we invest in diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is like I've never seen any company do. And so she really, drives that messaging, but it's across the entire executive leadership team when we think about diversity and inclusion. And so things like really important things like when you're going to go hire for a role, do you have a diverse candidate pool? And it's an interesting data point, Randy, because a lot of people don't know this. They think about that creating a diverse candidate pool takes too long. You'll hear this from hiring managers. The reality is, all the data shows is that to create a diverse candidate pool the maximum it extends the process is like 2 weeks. So all of us can take the time to build the right candidate pool so that we pick the right person for the job. And 2 weeks is not a lot in those hiring cycles. So
that's great. And then, diversity of thought and how that adds to the team and kind of everything else is just amazing. And obviously, one of the several reasons why the company's doing so well. So I guess we have to give a lot of the credit to the great results then to Jackie. Is that it?
Absolutely. Jackie's a huge part of the leadership team. She's amazing.
Awesome. Good. All right. Well, time flies when we're having fun. So, Paul, you've been amazing. So anybody that's watching, feel free to tell others. It gets posted and reposted across YouTube and a bunch of other social mediums and obviously on LinkedIn. So Paul, you've been amazing. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And next week of episode number 148, Joanne Moretti, who is the CRO at Fictive. And I know she'll be likewise sharing some fantastic thoughts and words of wisdom for everybody. So everybody have a great night, depending upon time zone, or rest of day, and great week. And thank you very much, Paul. And Tucker, as always, thanks for your help behind the scenes.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy. Great to be with you.